Welcome back, everybody, to the Nosebleed Sports Podcast. I am Chris Witt, and with me, as always, is Mr. Adam Schmidt. Adam, how are you today?
Doing very well. How about yourself?
Well, I feel like I'm going to be a little less loud today, as normally I'm in my basement. Today I'm in a hotel room, and it's currently 10:45 at night. So I'm going to try to keep it halfway quiet so I don't get a phone call later from room service telling me to shut the lip up.
Landline.
Look out.
It looks like a classy joint from your background there. It looks like it could be one of those stock. They can't call you now if you unplug it. Put a do not disturb thing on the door. Doesn't matter if they knock.
That's right. Stock pictures in the background. I mean, that's a pretty classic tree back there. You know, the wooded area. You know how we do. Yeah, the classic Holiday Inn Express. That's how I roll.
Nice.
Yeah, you know, I might be able to perform surgery tomorrow. We'll see. The other thing I wanted to say before we get this thing started, I want to apologize to everybody watching on YouTube today because I didn't bring a hat with me. And I know how goofy my hair can get. And I didn't bring a hat on the road. I don't wear a hat for work. It's a little weird, but yeah, I apologize ahead of time.
What's wrong with your hair?
Well, not all of us are blessed with a full head of hair like you, bub. Look at that thing. Dude, that goes back like 6 inches past my forehead where my receding hairline heads to.
Whatever. All right. So you're in a classy joint there, coming to us from the Holiday Inn Express. I'm coming to you from the same old boring, poorly lit living room. It's
not the same. It's not the same old. It's not the same old because the last 2 weeks you've come to us from a different location.
You're right. I have. I'm back home though, and I'm in the comfort of my own couch, even though it's not a very comfortable couch, and just sit my same old boring wall.
The same old white background. Yeah,
That's
you
right.
can tell he's been at his woman's house for the last 2 weeks because very well decorated in the background, beautiful floating shelves, picture frames, things Adam would never have in his house.
Correct.
On that note, let's get into it. So we've got our Mount Rushmore quarterbacks. We've got Rhys Nicholson live at the Athenaeum, I believe, whatever that is. And then we want to get the sports topic for today that we're going to get into is going to be something that's been going on here for a while. James Harden was traded to the Nets from the Rockets. Today, we're recording Wednesday night. Today was the first time. Harden's 3 games in, but tonight's the first game with all 3 of their stars. So tonight against Cleveland, which I just found out since Kyrie's been gone for 3 years now, Kyrie has only played in Cleveland 1 time. This is his 2nd time playing in Cleveland since he's been gone 4 years ago. So, that being said, it went to overtime. They lost, but all 3 played. Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. What do you think?
Well, first of all, we should, and this is obviously a continuation from the discussion we started talking about last week when we found out like an hour before we went on or something like that James Harden had been traded. And so we got to see a couple of his games where it was just he and Kevin Durant. And they won. I think they won both of those first 2 games that Harden played with Brooklyn. And both of those guys played very well. Their normal numbers. Kevin Durant looks terrific. It looks like he is it looks like Kevin Durant is his old self. It looks like he has not missed a beat. and he's 100% healthy, I think, because he looks so good. He's run the floor. He's cutting. He's doing everything you would think a guy that had such a catastrophic injury would be apprehensive about doing when he first comes back and starts playing games. He looks fantastic. James Harden looks suddenly rejuvenated since he got.
He looks like he lost weight. I think he was wearing a fat suit in Houston. I think he was wearing a fat suit.
I've seen so many things on Twitter and all kinds of stuff. Somebody posted a picture, like a split picture of his last game in Houston and his like pre-game first game in Brooklyn, and it does look like he lost 30 pounds in 2 days or something like that.
Hey,
looks like a totally.
So we know that Harden dropped a ton of weight last year in between that COVID layoff, right, and got in phenomenal shape. So I believe he was in great shape. It's probably the way the jersey's moving on him or something like that in those Houston Rockets pictures. But Harden and Durant were laughing, having fun. They looked like they belonged together. They could win the East, just the two of them, the way it looked. They looked tough. Tonight, you got Kyrie back.
And it's funny because they played, it was double overtime, as a matter of fact. James Harden and Kevin Durant both played over 50 minutes, and Kyrie played 48 minutes, over 48 minutes. So, and the three of them easily led the team in minutes. Jeff Green is playing. That's the thing. They gave up just about all of their depth in bringing these guys in. So,
but think about this. By giving up all of that depth, right, you now have 3 stars, 3 studs. You're guaranteed to have at least one in at all times. It's not like other teams that may not have one of their 2 stars in at any given time. There is no point in any game that all 3 of them are going to be sitting out unless they're up by 150.
Yeah, and they'll have plenty of those games too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But those guys played that many minutes in this game, and they lost by 12 to Cleveland, who's had a really good start to the season. But it still feels like they've got to be considered one of the bottom, at least in the bottom half of the league by the end of the league, or by the end of the season. You would think that things will even out, and they kind of play to the back of their basketball card, and they'll be where they've been since LeBron left. So we got
Sorry, I just moved because I feel like I was being too loud over there. So I feel like that was closer to where the person on the other side of the wall's bed might be. So I moved it down to the other side.
That's very considerate of you. I appreciate that. So Harden had a triple-double, another triple-double. He only scored 21 points. But on this team, you're probably going to see that. You're probably going to see one of these 3 guys every night get 20, 22, 23, when they would normally average 28, 29, 30. All 3 of those guys can average 30 points easily a night. And there might be a few nights this year that we see 3 guys get 30 points on this team.
Yeah.
It might give you 90. And they're going to have to. And going back to that point about depth, Jeff Green is starting for them. He played 45 minutes tonight. And DeAndre Jordan, who, they had Jared Allen, and he was kind of the younger guy who can play more minutes, who was probably going to be taking over and, playing a lot more minutes. And DeAndre Jordan was coming off the bench and was going to kind of, fill in rebounding and defense in the post against other teams' bigger players. But he is now starting. He's now back to starting for them, and he's going to have to play a decent amount of minutes. They've got Joe Harris coming off the bench, one of the best shooters in the league. So he should flourish. Joe Harris should flourish. He should still get plenty of looks, I think. He might get a few less touches a game or something, but he should be wide open a lot.
He should. He should be wide open. And the big three, Harden, Kyrie, and and Durant, even though their points may drop, you're going to see all of their assists go up, every one of them, because every pass that they've made in the past to a secondary player that the shot was missed, that shot's going in 65% of the time to 75% of the time now, because you've got three of the best scorers in all of basketball.
That's right. And this was, like you said, James Harden's third game in Brooklyn. So this is his second triple-double in the 3 games that he's played. So, because he had 12 assists tonight. Durant had 8 assists. Durant was 2 assists away from a triple-double. He had 38, and Kyrie had 37 in his return back after however many games he just missed for personal reasons. I still don't know exactly what they were, but you know, so total they had what, 75 yeah. So they had they had 96 tonight together. So there you have, I mean, you're going to get that a lot. I mean, 90 doesn't sound all that far off. It might happen more often than I even thought.
Maybe every single night.
Maybe every night, but is whatever. So unfortunately, I didn't get to watch the game, but was adding Kyrie, did that add a different element to the way they were playing to make them not be able to stop? I mean, I don't feel like Kyrie Irving would make you a worse defensive team. But maybe you're just not as good a defensive team when you have, I mean, Kyrie is a score first guy. James Harden obviously is the only thing he does well on defense really is rebound, because he's a pretty big guard. But
yep.
Other than that, I mean, you're kind of relying on those guys to do most of everything for you. You know, Jordan isn't the 15 rebound a game DeAndre Jordan he was in LA. He played 24 minutes, got 4 rebounds tonight. So you're gonna have. I mean, there's nobody coming off this bench that's gonna. Spencer Dinwiddie is still hurt. So that's another guy that's going to be, when he gets back, is going to give them another good player who can do a little bit of everything. But I don't know. This is a weird thing to have Kyrie back, those guys to put up that many points, and to give up 147. So I don't know.
In overtime, and their defense will come along. I think their defense will come along as these guys get learning the fact that they're going to have to play more defense, because they're not going to be the star on the court, the individual star on the court all the time. If 3 of them are playing, they can't count on 4 other guys to play defense, because there's only 2 other guys out there. And they will figure that out. I truly believe that these are 3 phenomenal basketball players. They're too smart not to figure it out. That being said, how do you feel Kyrie coming back is going to work on this team?
Chris, we always say, you know, winning kind of solves everything, solves all kinds of problems. If they can outscore people, and if that's the way they're going to run it, and they're going to try to beat people 140 to 130 every night or something like that, they can do that. And that's, you know, it's not going to be a surprise under Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni. It's not going to be a surprise if that's the way they play. But they are good. But that has traditionally not worked to get through the playoffs into the finals. It didn't work in Phoenix with those guys, with Steve Nash as the point guard, as the MVP of the league, and one of the best players in the league for 5, 6, 7 years in that system under Mike D'Antoni. They were one of the best teams in the league, but they never got over that hump. They never got to the finals. And then Houston never got to the finals under Mike D'Antoni and James Harden. So
But those teams didn't have 3 of the top 10 players in the entire league playing.
Right. But they're going to have to, and you know what, I think it's going to have to come. I mean, Steve Nash is going to have to say, okay, look, we need to offense is going to come for us because we have three guys who are three of the most talented scorers and basketball players with the ball in their hands in the entire world. That's going to come naturally. Like I don't even know that you have to worry about the offensive end. Honestly, I think you almost focus a little bit more on what you need to do on defense, put together schemes each night for whoever you're playing, and try to get guys to be convinced that, guess what, these three guys get to get out and run if you get defensive stops and you get rebounds and quick outlets and steals and stuff like that. I mean, that's how every team that runs and gets out in transition, most of the time, those teams are good defensive teams because that stuff starts on the defensive end. So if they can convince everybody to do that, if they can get DeAndre Jordan maybe back a little bit closer to what he was, get him, excited about being one of the best defenders and shot blockers and rebounders in the league, even if he doesn't get back, and he probably won't get back to where he was, but if he can get back to giving you 10 points and 10 rebounds a game, and you can kind of count on that and getting a couple of blocks a game and changing, 8, 9, 10 shots around the rim and making teams shoot mid-range jumpers and stuff more often. If they can get him to do that, and then you still have Kevin Durant. Remember when the first year Kevin Durant got to Golden State, he was, for the first half of the year, was leading the league in block shots per game because they convinced him to lock in defensively. And he's an athletically gifted guy. He's 6'11" or whatever, and his wingspan is 22 and a half feet long or whatever it is. And he can be a great defender when he wants to be. And same with Kyrie Irving's one of the quickest guys in the league, and James Harden is one of the really kind of one of the smartest players in the league.
James Harden was in the top 10 in steals last year.
Right. For a guy known for not playing good defense or not playing hard on defense, that's pretty good, because I feel like he's a step or two ahead of everybody else, and that's what makes him such a great scorer. If he applies that on both ends, I think this team could be a really good, at least a good defensive team. They don't have to be the best defensive team in the league at all. They don't even have to be close to that. If they're in the top third or something, if they're the 10th best defensive team in the league, they're going to be the first or second best offensive team in the league probably. That's a pretty good formula right there.
Okay, so Kyrie's back. Kyrie missed 7 games. 7 games due to family and personal stuff. NBA fined him $50,000. He was fined more money by his team. Is this in reality, outside of the basketball things, is this going to work?
Long term, I'm going to say no. I think it can work for a year. I think it can work for this year, maybe next year. Beyond that, I don't have much hope.
Is Kyrie the odd man out then?
Well, I mean, contracts, money is going to have to do with how that all works. They're going to have to figure that out. But it seems like the guy who's had, I don't know, that's hard to say. Because, I mean, the things in Houston is playing on TV right now. And before their game, they had a little thing where John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, 2 other stars in this league, former stars, and we'll see how they do because they're the 2 best players in Houston now, spoke openly to the media about the disrespect that James Harden had on their team, to their teammates, to them. Usually, especially in the league now, I'm going to call it the LeBron era league, where the stars are friends.
It's not just your team is your family. The league is a family.
That's right. And stars usually don't speak out like that about each other in the media. There are probably plenty of guys in the league that don't care for each other, don't like each other that much. Chris Paul has had all kinds of issues with guys, and he does his little, mind games and stuff like that during games, and he's had trouble with some teammates and stuff like that. And so has Kyrie Irving, and so has James Harden, and so have some other guys who have played in All-Star games in this league. But for the most part, they don't speak in the media just openly about this guy was disrespectful. He was coming in being, criticizing people and coming in late, not caring about anything and not giving any effort and, being careless and all that kind of stuff. It was surprising to hear that. So
So
I'm going to
let
say
me tell you what.
Kyrie Irving's probably the odd man out because it doesn't even feel fair to say this, but it kind of does because I kind of feel like he does this to himself. It feels like if there's going to be a problem with anybody, it's going to be with him being unhappy and wanting to change things or something. If things go south, if they lose 2 or 3 games in a row, and you start hearing people comment and you're going to hear things. This is going to be the most watched team in the league, the most closely followed and scrutinized team in the league for the rest of the year, no matter what. And that's good for LeBron. That's good for a couple of these other teams that are at the top of the league. They're not gonna have to worry too much about those distractions because everybody's eyes are on Brooklyn right now. So yes, I'm gonna say to answer your question, Kyrie's probably the guy out, but James Harden over the last few years has had those troubles too. We'll find out when things don't go well for a week or two.
We'll find out when the Lakers beat them in the finals. And at that point in time, Harden will be the one that's out for 2 reasons. Number one, his contract, the years on his contract are less than what KD signed a brand new contract. Kyrie signed a brand new contract when they came to Brooklyn. Harden's going to be the odd man out for that reason and the fact of what you said about Boogie Cousins and John Wall. I think the respect factor for Harden is less than the other two. And this is hard for me to say and I like Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie Irving is, like I've said it a million times, I think he's the best finisher at the basket in all basketball. He might be the best clutch shooter in the entire league. Like if there's a last second shot that I want taken on that team, it's Kyrie Irving over Kevin Durant. Oh, well, definitely over James Harden, but over Kevin Durant. I want Kyrie Irving taking that shot. That's me personally. And I do not like the stuff Kyrie has been doing. But I want to break. I've been thinking about this all day today. I saw something yesterday, and Kyrie Irving is known and in the media, especially lately, the ridiculous stuff he says. He gets himself in really bad situations with his words. And part of that could just be the fact that he doesn't know how to express himself, right? Some people are aloof. Some people have some issues. That's Kyrie. This man, over the last year, has donated $323,000 to Feeding America. He partnered with City Harvest to make sure that 250,000 meals were distributed to New Yorkers that couldn't get that were hungry and starving in the city of New York. Partnered with Nike to donate 17 pallets of food and masks to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Committed $1.5 million to the WNBA players who opted out of last year's regular season. Paid off 9 students' tuition at Lincoln University, and no matter how you feel, he bought a house for the family of George Floyd. And I don't care how you feel politically or whatever about that whole situation. It's something that means something to him. If something means something to you and you have the ability to do it, do you do it? Yes or no? Some people do, some people don't. Kyrie had the money to help someone out for a cause that he believed in. Whether you believe in the cause or not, that's not the point. The point is this man does a lot, and he never talks about any of it. None of it. He'll never post. He'll never say a word about any of it. And I kind of feel bad that this dude is just getting his head kicked in lately over something that he's been struggling with since last season. His personal issues and his mental state has not been right since this George Floyd and all this other stuff happened last year. I think Kyrie's going to be fine. The more I think about it and the more I read into this, I think Kyrie be fine. It's James Harden that I'm worried about.
Really? So we know that. Okay, so we know that he had trouble with Chris Paul. Okay, they ended up butting heads or whatever, and that stuff all came up, especially at the end when they lost in the playoffs. I mean, there was some talk about it, and then it all kind of blew up after they lost and were eliminated. And then Russell Westbrook came in, and they couldn't quite get it right either, and they got eliminated from the playoffs.
And Russell was hurt. Russell was hurt for a lot of that too, and there was a lot of things that went into that.
Yeah, and same with Chris Paul too. But then this year, that disrespect stuff that those guys were talking about, that was after James Harden had committed himself to leaving Houston. He asked for a trade. He wanted to be traded in the offseason. Houston wasn't going to do it. They didn't trade him. So they wanted him to stay. They wanted to keep trying to build around him. And he just could not get back to that. I think he had already left in his mind. And so, and once I think a lot of us have been in that situation. Once you have one foot out the door, whether it's a job or a relationship or whatever, sometimes you just get in your head, you're like, this isn't going to work out. I'm done. And he even said that after the last game that he played there. And he said, I love the city of Houston. This just isn't going to work out. I just don't think this can be fixed. He said that. And that was, he had already had one foot out the door. And then him saying that in the media was like, I think really caught the attention of the front office in Houston. And that's when they realized, look, we can't, this guy's going to poison the team. And obviously he was by the comments that Boogie and John Wall made. So they made the right, we talked about that last week. We both think they made the right choice in Houston to go ahead and move on. It might take years and years to build it back up for them, which stinks, but the ultimate goal was winning a championship, and they didn't get there with him. And he was unhappy enough. He wanted out. He needed a new, fresh start. Everybody needs that sometimes. And this is his fresh start, and he's got better teammates, and he's going to have an opportunity to play in another system, and probably a similar system to what he was playing before, except now he gets, instead of getting 12 assists a game to PJ Tucker and Trevor Ariza and Eric Gordon, he's getting him to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, right, and Joe Harris.
Yep.
I don't know. It's going to be – I see Harden being a little more committed now, probably. And I don't know if I can say the same thing for Kyrie. That's why I think if anybody is going to have the bigger issue, it's going to be Kyrie. But all I know is I'm excited. Like I said, I wasn't able to watch the game tonight, but I'm excited to be able to watch the game with all three of them together because, like we said, Durant and Harden the other night, I got to watch those two together, and they were running the floor. They were passing to each other. It was strange to me. It felt weird to see James Harden catch the ball in the wing and make a post entry pass into the low post and then just kind of back off and relocate on the 3-point line. Like, okay, go to work. Like he got rid of the ball and had no interest in getting it back, or, was like, okay, Kevin Durant has the ball in the post. He's going to score. I don't have to do anything else.
That's going to be the key right there. Kevin Durant, the quiet assassin, right? He's going to be the key to making this big three work and to making it gel. It's all going to be about Kevin Durant because he's the one. Him and James Harden are friends. That's well documented. They get along. They're good friends. They played great together in Oklahoma City years ago. Now it seems like forever ago, but in All-Star games and everything else. They've been together and they're friends. Kyrie, last year, it seemed like him and Kyrie had some kind of decent relationship, even though he didn't play at all. But it's going to come down to how he manages these two. He's going to have more of a vocal role inside the locker room, not necessarily outside, but inside the locker room. You're going to have Kevin Durant's going to have to keep this team together.
Yeah, I agree. And Kevin Durant, like I think because of the example, like when he first got to Golden State and they, kind of were like, okay, we're obviously an incredible offensive team already. And then we're adding you, but we also play defense here. And this is what we expect of you. And so I think getting that treatment when he got there, I think now it's his turn to take that and kind of be, like you said, be the one vocal about, okay, guys, we don't have to Kyrie's point in the offseason, probably don't even need a coach because we're all intelligent enough and skilled enough to score whenever we want, however we want. We have 3 different guys that can get buckets every single trip down the floor. Now we've got to make sure everybody's committed to the defensive end too, and make sure we're doing our jobs there so that the offensive part is easier for us.
Yep. All right. So I feel like we got all our Kyrie and Brooklyn Nets stuff out of us. Let's get into the fun parts of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
You got to pick both the Mount Rushmore and the comedian for this year. The Mount Rushmore you chose all-time great quarterbacks, which, holy cow, all-time great might be the most difficult thing in the world. But I'm going to let you go first and tell me all about your all-time great NFL quarterbacks, because I know you have plenty of reasons why.
This is hard because, number one, football is a distant third, maybe not even third, as far as favorite sports. I can sit there and look at pitchers' numbers and shortstops and left fielders and first basemen and catchers all day long. I can look at point guards and centers and shooting guards and rank those guys and look at numbers and all that stuff, and I love it. Football is a game I've never played. It's a game I've watched my whole life, but it's a game that I have not been quite as into as those other games. So I feel less qualified to talk about this, but I did think it was going to be fun because I thought this one was going to be kind of hard. I thought this was going to be more of a challenging one. And although we've done some ones that were more fun, I think this one was going to be more challenging. And I was kind of interested to kind of look into these things a little bit and see. So I have picked 3. I picked 3 on my Mount Rushmore, and I've got on the spot. I'm going to have to pick a 4th.
You're pulling a Chris.
Pulling a Chris, and this is tough. I
love it.
I have no idea who my 4th is going to be. But I'm gonna give you right up front. Let me just tell you, I'm taking Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees on my Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Since I knew that was going to get a reaction, let me tell you why.
Okay.
There are a bunch of guys from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s who could and should be in this conversation. The guys from the 90s and especially the 2000s and the 2010s, those guys, those numbers are going to be, if you look up the guys all-time passing touchdowns and passing yards and that kind of stuff, the top 15, like 10 of them are either playing now or have just retired in the last few years.
Exactly.
Because the game is played differently, they pass the ball so much more now than they did 30 and 40 years ago, and everybody knows that. So, but here's the thing. I think that means that it doesn't necessarily mean you are a better quarterback or, the Roger Staubachs and even as far back as the Otto Grahams and those kind of guys. those guys played in a time where they didn't throw the ball nearly as much, and throwing the ball was mostly just used late in games when you were losing. Now it's used all game, every game, and for some teams, it's their primary means of offense. They throw first and run the ball second. And that started, it got huge with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and Drew Brees at that time. Those guys, and then even a little bit before that with Elway and Marino and Aikman and those guys, mostly with Elway and Marino. And to me, that means that you have a greater responsibility. So you have a greater responsibility to not only read the defense, figure out these guys are now especially Peyton Manning made it famous again, calling your own plays, make audibles, changing plays at the last second, reading the defense as you line up and changing the play and then snapping the ball and running something totally different. He sort of re-revolutionized again the way the game is played and the way quarterbacking is done, right?
Sure.
And so to me, you have a greater responsibility. If you have to throw the ball 40 or 50 times a game, that means, yes, you have more opportunities. You're going to get more yards. You're going to throw more passing touchdowns and stuff like that and have more completions. But you are also you have a greater responsibility. You are put in a position to make a play a lot more often. Your numbers go up with your opportunities, which also means your opportunities to fail as well. Theoretically, you should be throwing more interceptions and completing less passes. Probably, like, your completion percentage should be lower now because you're throwing the ball so much more. So for that reason, I think that being a quarterback is harder now, even though the rules have also changed to favor, you can't get hit as much. It's designed for the offense to succeed a little bit more because of the rules with pass interference and that kind of thing. But I just feel like the responsibility is a lot greater. So the guys like Manning, Brady, Brees, who have all the records and who are first, second, third, fourth, and just about everything all time as far as like total stuff.
Yep.
I think that's because they have had more on their shoulders, a more heavy load on their shoulders. So I put those three, and then I kind of want to reach back and put one of those older guys in, but I'm going to say it's between Joe Montana, Johnny Unitas, Dan Marino, Roger Staubach, and John Elway. So that's a lot to choose from for my last.
That is a lot to choose from.
And you're not even talking about Aaron Rodgers, who's right there almost right there with some of those guys too.
When he finishes his career, he'll be right there, if not have beaten most of these records.
You're right. And so it's hard because they didn't throw quite as much. And some of these guys who are famously all-time great quarterbacks, the John Elways and the Joe Montanas and those guys, are just as famous because of what they did in the postseason. They were on good teams, and they were a big reason why they were on good teams, but they also had good teams around them, and they were quarterbacks on really good teams. And their performances in the playoffs were usually spectacular, but they weren't always at the very top of the league in everything, in passing yards and completions and all that kind of stuff, like the guys like Brady and Manning and Brees were throughout the regular season every year and the postseason, right? So that kind of throws me off a little bit. I don't know how much – I'm a guy that likes to – I'm talking way too much about this last one. I'm a guy that doesn't like to put like, because Joe Montana was 4-0 in Super Bowls. That's incredible. But if Peyton Manning has 10,000 more passing yards in the same amount of years, than Joe Montana does, to me, that's you're a better quarterback, you know, than winning 4 Super Bowls over 1 Super Bowl or 2 Super Bowls or whatever. So I don't know. I have always had a thing with Dan Marino. I don't know, like I just all the stuff I heard about him, and he had his best years in the '80s, when I was probably too young to really appreciate Dan Marino back then. But the way that people talk about his skill set, and he was putting up unbelievable numbers on some teams that weren't all that good in Miami. He was the first quarterback to throw for 5,000 yards in a season. His '84 season, he threw for over 5,000 yards. He set a single season touchdown record with 48, which has been broken like 6 times now. But but at the time, that was a record that had stood for a long time, and he broke it. And he broke it by 12 touchdowns, which is crazy. And then the next closest guy had 19 less touchdowns. So he had 48 touchdowns. The next closest guy that year had 29.
It's crazy.
So Dan Marino, for some reason, and I know he never won a championship. Like I said, he was on some teams that weren't that good. He had, I think it was an Achilles injury or something. He had like a pretty bad injury in '93 and was never quite the same after that. His greatest accomplishment, his greatest achievement in football is his role in Ace Ventura, and it, you know, he played a big part. And as a matter of fact, he's the one that pointed out the thing that helped Ace discover how Ray Finkle and Louis Einhorn were linked.
Finkle and Einhorn.
Yeah, in that last.
Your gun is digging into my hip.
That's right. What's the matter, Ace? You want me to read you your rights? So anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and put for his role in because he was so good. From what I understand, it was like he had like a 0.3 of a second release or something like that, which was like unheard of at that time.
Way over top.
Like, yeah, he was fantastic skill set wise. And I think if he didn't get hurt and if he played on a little bit better team, he would have been even better. And we would be talking about Dan Marino's an easy one in there. So I'm taking him as my 4th guy. Let's see yours.
So I'm starting with Johnny Unitas.
Yeah.
Johnny Unitas was a 4-time MVP. Johnny Unitas there was no other quarterback like him in his era. He was so far, like we talk about these quarterbacks now, and you got Breeze, Manning, Brady, Rodgers, and they all are breaking these records of Favre and of Dan Marino and all these old-timer records. We talk about all these guys, but they're all doing it together, right? Johnny Unitas was head and shoulders above everybody else. So I put Johnny Unitas in there because of how he was in his era. I put Dan Marino in there because because in his era, he literally set the bar for what the new quarterback is now 30 years ago. Dan Marino, like you said, everything about his passing record, his touchdown record, is all the records he held for years. From there's so many quarterbacks. So I broke my next 2 down strictly by the thing that quarterbacks are the ones who have the ball in their hand, and more than anybody. So I went by the quarterbacks who have the most Super Bowls, and I went with Joe Montana and Tom Brady. So Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, Johnny Unitas. And I'm going to tell you right now, to keep Brett Favre off of that list, to keep Peyton Manning off of that list, is as hard as it can be, And I love Drew Brees more than anybody in the entire world. Probably the most accurate quarterback to ever set foot on a football field. But he played with Manning, with Brady, with even with Favre for a while, and with these other guys. And, unfortunately, he couldn't set himself apart in any way, whereas Tom Brady did by winning 6 Super Bowls, maybe a 7th. Or has he have 7? I don't know how many Super Bowls. The guy's been in 14 conference championships in 20 years or something. It's so stupid. It's not even funny.
Yeah, he's got 6 championships. Drew Brees is first all-time in completions, first all-time in yards, second all-time in touchdowns. To your point, he played same era with all those guys, and he is right.
So you got to find the thing that sets yourself apart from everybody else, right? Well, in Dan Marino's era, there was no quarterback who had. Well, there was. It was Joe Montana. So they both make it. Johnny Unitas makes it because he was a game changer. If I could have 5, would I put a Peyton Manning? Peyton Manning was a better quarterback than Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Drew Brees is my favorite quarterback of all time. If it was my personal Mount Rushmore, Drew Brees would be on there. He's my favorite quarterback of all time. He's just on that. He's just a hair below. He's with Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, and him in that next tier. And then you've got underneath him, you've got Staubach, you've got Roethlisberger, you've got Namath, and who else am I missing? Huh?
Elway.
So there are those guys there, but they're just not. And you know who else doesn't get enough props in this is a guy who made it not just to 4 Super Bowls, but 4 straight Super Bowls.
Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly should be talked about in something like this.
Yeah.
If his luck changes and he won those 4 straight Super Bowls, he might be talked about as the greatest quarterback ever.
Well, then do you talk about the guy who played against him in 2 or 3 of those, Troy Aikman?
Troy Aikman, yeah, I mean, I guess, but it was only 2. Jim Kelly made it to 4 straight. Brother, that's ridiculous.
That's fantastic. That's very, very good. Those Bills teams were great. This might be the next time you see this year. Might be the next time you see a Bills team go to the Super Bowl. That was going to be
all depends on if Patrick Mahomes plays or not.
Yeah, right. You're right. I was going to ask you your favorite all time. Like, forget about numbers, forget about all that stuff. What you said.
Drew Brees by far. Drew Brees.
Peyton Manning, pretty easily my favorite.
Drew Brees is the most accurate quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life. I remember when he was with San Diego, he was in a Pro Bowl. And it was him in the Pro Bowl. One of the games they played was this thing where they had these big targets moving back and forth, and you had to throw balls and things, and the balls had blue chalk on the end of them. And it came down to him and Peyton Manning, and he beat the brakes off of Peyton Manning at the end of that. He was hitting bullseyes, dead center, 30 yards, 40 yards down the field in the time, and it was timed. It was amazing. And he's been like that his whole life. That's why his completion percentage is so high. That's why he's got so many completions, therefore yards, therefore touchdowns. It is what it all comes together.
And man, that offense, they always put 2 or 3 really good receivers around him, and they just filled the field with receivers and threw it down the field. And
Did they really do that, or did he do what Tom Brady did and just make receivers unbelievable?
Yeah,
Tom Brady made a lot of receivers money because after they left New England, you never heard of them again. Outside of Randy Moss, who was his best receiver? Deion Branch.
I was trying to think of who early on. I'm thinking somebody else, or maybe Deion Branch is who I'm thinking of. Somebody in those first few years. I feel like there's somebody I'm thinking of that I can't think of his name. But anyway, Randy Moss, either way, Randy Moss was definitely his best receiver he ever had. And yeah, he had Wes Welker. I don't know what would have happened to Wes Welker if he played. If he played with Drew Brees, might have been the same thing. But that's too.
Yeah, no, but that's different though. I'm talking. Wes Welker is a possession receiver, right? So that's just the best hands that you've ever seen, right? It's just a dude that gets open and has unbelievable hands. I'm talking about a guy who can get up and make plays. That year with Randy Moss, when they went 16-0, that year with Randy Moss, what was it? They were 17-1 over when they lost in that Super Bowl against the Giants. That year with Randy Moss, it showed what would happen if the Patriots ever put a real number one wide receiver with Tom Brady. Tom Brady was breaking records, single season records that year because that's how good he is.
50 touchdowns that year or more, I think. 50, maybe 50, 51, 52, something like that.
I think it was 54.
54, yeah. That was a crazy year. That was incredible to see who might be the best wide receiver to ever play with I think everybody pretty much considers Tom Brady the best quarterback ever now. So pretty interesting to see. Kind of like the greatest catcher and greatest second baseman playing on the same team at the same time as well, of all time. So anyway, there you go. That's our quarterbacks. We got that one out of the way. I hope your dad isn't too upset with our picks.
He wanted us to do eras.
I know.
I think eras would be easier to do eras, but this is more difficult, and I kind of like the difficult factor in it.
Yeah, eras would be fun too, and it brings me to what we're gonna do next week. So, because I had to do two consecutive, because you did two consecutive, so I had to do two consecutive. So, what I was thinking is Mount Rushmore of sports movies, but we either do sports movies or we make it specific baseball movies or basketball movies. You want to do sports in general, which is going to be harder. Okay, I have to do it. You're right. Thank you. You know what? You're kind of therapy for me. You make me make decisions, and that's a hard thing
to
do.
That's right. I'm not doing it.
And
I'm not doing it.
Let's do. We can always go back and do sports movies in general down the road. So since I believe that baseball is the best sports movie sport, in my opinion, I think we do Mount Rushmore of baseball movies next week.
Oh man, dude, you blew my mind. This might be my new favorite Mount Rushmore since the 90s sitcoms, and before that, whatever we did before that. This might be oh my gosh. My top 10 movies of all time are all baseball movies.
Yeah, I figured. You know what's great about it too is you have a kind of a wide variety, because some of the best comedies are baseball movies.
Mm-hmm.
Durhams, and there are a few really
major leagues, all the major leagues.
Right. So we don't have to start naming all the baseball movies now, because we could probably just do we could probably spend the next 2 hours and do our Mount Rushmore of baseball movies right now. But
this is going to be the hardest one I've ever done. This is going to be the hardest one for me.
We'll definitely save it for next week. So, because we need to get into our last thing for the day, and that is the comedy segment. We pick a comedy special every week to watch. Last week, I chose Rhys Nicholson live at the Athenaeum, I think you said, and that's probably right. Something
like that.
All right. I would like to know what you think about Rhys Nicholson first. My first time seeing this gentleman, and
it's the first time I've ever seen this dude, ever. First thoughts, that can't be his real hair.
No.
Second thoughts were, so in the beginning, he jumped out right away, and he's here, and he's here, and he's here, and it was I wasn't following him really good at first. And I'm going to tell you, once it hit the middle of this thing, it really picked up. And I think he really started doing it. I started laughing. I finally started laughing, right? He talked about fur babies, your favorite thing. He hates it.
Yeah.
Love that. He has a fur baby, but he hates when people call it fur babies. Talked about collecting hair and teeth. Your brother was just talking about this the other day. He's got a jar full of his little baby teeth at home that your mom kept. I thought that was hilarious. He was talking about, I just got a few things that I laughed at, things that made me actually laugh. I wrote them down. He was talking about how him and his partner have a sign, like when they want to get out of a conversation at a party. He said he was talking to one of his friends, and it's what they do when they're diving, and he was like moving like this. He goes, "What are you doing, live Tindering right now?" He was swiping right. I thought that was pretty funny. Then he went to the when he went into the sex shop. That was super funny. Ooh, he thought he was pretty promiscuous, and he found out he was pretty bland. So, ooh, boy, ooh, I hope that never happens to me. And he saw a wall of fists. Ugh, that was pretty funny. Let's see, there's two more. The Lady and the Tramp reboot. His friend who caught his parents, and then what does it say? Oh, when him and his significant other were getting frisky over Skype, and he was checking his significant other out, and he said, "But then down in the bottom corner, there's a little rectangle that had me in it." And he was trying to close out the picture of himself, and it just blew up and it froze. I laughed really hard at those. So I gotta say, man, I was surprised when this started. I was like, this is gonna suck. This dude's not even very good. First 10, 15 minutes, wasn't into it, and it was funny. I started cracking up. So I'm gonna give him like a 3.8. It was pretty good.
Wow, that's a good score. And I'll tell you what, you said exactly what I think about it. Exactly what I was gonna say. I felt exactly the same way that it started out. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're talking too fast. He has an accent, so it takes a little bit more like a little bit more focus to really pick up everything he's saying. So that you have to adjust to that a little bit the first few minutes. And I was like, okay, all this energy really right up top, it's going to be like this the whole time. All right.
I put the subtitles on.
Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't even think to do that. Yeah, I should have done that. I usually don't like when the subtitles are on, and I've dated people before who have subtitles on all the time, and I'm like, come on.
Only when there's British people, or that's the only time I use subtitles.
I got you. That makes sense. So I'm like, man, this is great. And you're right. Not his real hair, wearing tons of makeup. I'm like, this dude is, I don't even know what this guy really looks like, because he has got layers of fake stuff on him. But
I had to look up if he was a male or a female. I wasn't 100% sure. And then I found out, okay, if you watch the whole special, okay, yeah, he's a male.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And he even makes a joke kind of early on about gender. Oh, yeah, something about he was at a gender reveal party or something. Still haven't had mine or something like that.
Crossed his fingers.
Yeah. But yeah, I was the same way, man. But once I got accustomed to it a little bit, to his energy and to picking up, everything he was saying and stuff like that, he's funny. So I was the same way, and I'm giving him a 3.4. 3.4, because in the first couple minutes I'm like, all right, this guy's like a 2 or something maybe, and then hung in there with it, and it was worth it. Guy's pretty good.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Okay, so that brings it to me. And I'll tell you here, I was on Netflix, and this is going to be a little long, all right? It's an hour and 37 minutes. So you got to bear with me on this. But I'm hoping and I'm thinking it's going to be worth it.
Okay.
Chris Rock, Total Blackout, the Tambourine Extended Cut. Chris Rock, brand new special, just out this year. Hey, there it is. Hey, listen, this is a shout out to Adam Schmidt. Just out this year. I'm not sure what month, but sometime this year.
Oh yeah. Meaning 2020.
Yes. So this actually came out in 2021. So it came out in January. It's in this month. It's this fresh. It's brand new. It's an hour and a half. It looks like it kind of goes in and out of some, like him, I don't know, doing something. But the bulk of it is him doing stand-up. And if I can get Chris Rock doing stand-up, I will take it all day, every day. I'll tell you this. I wanted to do Ali Sadiq. I've been listening to this dude like crazy, but you can't get any of his full specials on anything.
Really?
He's only got like 2 or 3 that he did back, 5-6 years ago. I can't get them. You got to buy everything. Every one of them you got to buy, no matter how you get on it. So I'm telling you, at some point in time, we're going to figure out a way to do that. But this Chris Rock, Total Blackout, Netflix, get it on. Let's go.
I'm so happy. I had that written down because that was going to be mine next week for sure. I did. You saw Tambourine, right? When it came.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but this is I saw this last week or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes! It's even if it's the same jokes for some of it or whatever.
It can't be though. It says extended cut, so I assume that it's extra.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I was thinking that it was. Yeah, I was thinking it was the Tambourine show that they released a year ago or whatever, but plus more, some of the stuff that they cut out of the original one. So maybe we'll see the full Tambourine plus another 30 minutes of extended stuff.
Yeah, even if it is Tambourine, we didn't do that one, so I'd be fine with
100%
going back over it.
100%. Love Chris Rock. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very, very happy that you picked that. All right, so we've got next week. Man, how exciting is that? We got Chris Rock to talk about next week, and we've got the Mount Rushmore of baseball movies to talk about next week.
Not only that, Adam, but we have the Xavier Musketeers, the college basketball Xavier Musketeers beat writer, Adam Baum, coming on for USA Today beat writer, Inquirer, USA Today, whatever you want to call it, beat writer, Adam Baum coming on next week to talk a little bit of college basketball and a lot of bit of Xavier basketball, plus all this stuff. It's going to be fun.
I'm really excited. It's been probably close to a year since we've had him on. Right?
It's been quite a while. It's been a crazy last year, obviously, for all of us, but Adam's on. He'll be here. He's in for next week. Hopefully Xavier will play a basketball game on Tuesday of next week because they'll have been off for 16 days before they play that game due to COVID inside them and other programs. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. But Adam Baum, Xavier basketball, college basketball. We've got Chris Rock. We've got Mount Rushmore baseball movies. Don't forget to turn your headlights on.